To recover the mystic in everybody is to wake a culture and a religion up. Carl Jung says, only the mystic brings what is creative to religion itself. So if you're going to renew Christianity, renew religion of any kind, I think everyone would agree that it needs it today. We got to put mysticism forward.
You don't know me, not yet. I'm the filmmaker here. I was traveling through Europe after a summer art program in Italy. It was 1983. All I had was a few dollars, a sketchbook, and a journal. Compared to my college hometown of Boulder, Colorado, Spain was awakening after decades of Franco's repressive rule. As I wandered in Barcelona's Las Rambla alleyways, where a young Pablo Picasso once lived, I felt a seductive promise whirling around me, like the Greek muses, enticing me to cross their threshold, to truly acknowledge the creative force within me. But what future ordeals lay ahead? What if I just kept moving and refused to acknowledge their call? My body and mind felt disconnected. More questions than answers popped up. Did my existence matter? Did I have a spiritual purpose? How would I make a living after college with a degree in fine arts? Everything simmered in that summer heat, a panic attack of sorts, which I later learned was consistent with an existential crisis. While I would like to say that I walked into a church and was comforted by Saint Hildegard of Bingen, who is the subject of this film, that occurrence wouldn't happen until years later. I discovered the revolutionary call to action I had previously heard was a woman from the 12th century, a saint, whose influences in music, medicine, art, and theology are still being felt today. She had called to me like she has called to the people you're about to meet. Saint Hildegard of Bingen was an unruly and revolutionary mystic whose spirit still lives within each of us, ready to awaken to our own potential.
She was an incarnation of creativity, whether it's her painting, her music, her poetry, her writings, her research, her healing. She finds so many modes, and including just her prose and her poetry itself. Her language is stunning at times. She just grabs you, as she does, of course, with her music. The spirit flows through all things. It is what we tap into with what she calls greening power, and we tap into it with our imaginations and our creativity. This is why she says there's wisdom in all creative works. And obviously, I think you're absolutely right. I think it's a great idea. A patron saint of the artist would be Hildegard.
It's that power of creation. We all need to think about what can we create in our world so that way we can affect profound change. And it's through doing what we love. Create what you love. And then in turn, I think that heals ourselves, because it brings that very positive vibration and that very positive radiance and luminance to ourselves, to our work, and to all that we're doing.
And this is why the Grecian tradition that Hildegard so fully incarnates is about empowerment for everybody. And we all have to find the cosmic Christ inside us. Hildegard paints it, the man in sapphire blue, in every one of us.
So there's a lot of relationship between Hildegard and Ayurvedic and the Chinese. For example, Hildegard likes to cook, and all the stuff she cooks are remedies. This is what Hippocrates said already 2,000 years ago. Your food should be your remedy. And so if we cook a soup or if we make a meal with spelt, this is already has a purpose for your health.
She felt a connection to stones and knew that stones have a healing power too. So it's all these things in creation that by opening ourselves up to them, in a mystical way, we can become healers of ourselves. So she didn't actually heal people. She opened up a space in their spirit where they could heal themselves through a relationship with the plant world and with stones.
Hildegard was a nun of the 12th century, and she lived in some ways a usual life that a nun would live within a monastery. Focused on the divine liturgy, focused on holy work, as they would call it, the work of God.
The two main points of the Benedictine rule, prayers and work, they did not change since Hildegard. And this is also characteristic for our life here, so we have to earn the money for our life and all things here, the house and so on, by our own hands, as it's said in the rule of St. Benedict.
Hildegard was the 10th child of Hildebert and Mechthild, and she was, you can sort of think of it as she was offered as a tithe to the monastery.
Hildegard was born in 1098 in Bermersheim, on the other side of the Rhine, as the 10th child in her family. Her parents were noblemen, and with 14 years she came to the Disi-Bodenberg.
And remember that marriage was arranged for political reasons. And maybe Hildegard wouldn't have been, well, seemed like she might not have been a great obedient wife because she had a lot of character, personality, and intelligence, and that was obvious right away.
And she was given into the care of a woman named Jutta of Spanheim, who was an anchoress in that monastery. And that means a woman who would have been enclosed in an area for a life of prayer and reflection.
And there's controversy about how healthy Jutta was.
After Jutta died, it was like she blossomed, and she did do things in a different way.
And my interpretation has always been, look, this woman was her mentor. And obviously Hildegard had a great mentor because she learned a lot about music, and of course a lot about study and reading and writing and painting. So all those, it seems to me, all those skills and arts were passed on to her by someone as a child, and Jutta was her mentor.
Oddly enough, Hildegard doesn't mention Jutta very much in her writings, and Jutta had this very ascetic, strict observance of the Benedictine rule that Hildegard, when she eventually takes control, does not necessarily follow. Hildegard is much more moderate in her interpretation of the rule. And I wonder if that in itself can tell us that Hildegard was actually rather overwhelmed and disenchanted with it when she was a young girl. Jutta's own interpretation of it was, I can imagine, too strict in some ways for Hildegard.
I'm really glad that Hildegard didn't have the same kind of spirituality that Jutta did. I don't get into the flagellation and the beating of the body, because to me, and I think to Hildegard, from what we know about her and how she adorned her sisters, the body was the temple of the divine, and you don't beat that up. Because for me, to live in the cloister meant that I was truly the bride of Christ, and I would never leave there. And I could be in communion through meditation and prayer and deeply intimate with the Christ energy.
To compose 77 songs, to produce the first morality play, to write 9 books, to found 2 monasteries, to have a healing ministry, to write books on herbs and stones, and to heal people with the right foods and understand the mysteries of the animal kingdom. It just blows your mind. And so yes, she was the saint of creativity for sure.
To be a superstar in the Middle Ages meant to excel in holiness. And yes, she was. She was recognized by people not just in Germany, but all over Europe. as a very special person, a superstar, if you will. People wrote to her, they came to her. Once her fame was established, she had many visitors. She received letters from many places. So when we think about what her monastery would have been like, we need to remember there was a lot of activity.
It says all of creation is a symphony of joy and jubilation. And when Hildegard was a little girl, she had visions. And this, of course, was one of her visions, which she didn't reveal until her midlife.
She heard a voice telling her to write down all she heard and saw.
She heard the voice of the living light calling her to preach.
And I remember the day in my kitchen when this awareness was really coming to my consciousness, and I sat down and I said a quick prayer. Please take this away from me. I don't want to do this, it's too scary, and please take this away so that I can just be like I was before.
Just totally shook her by the strength of it, because God told her to speak and write what she heard and what she saw.
She was really bedridden half the time. She was in a lot of pain.
Kept it in for a while, then she discussed it with her secretary and mentor, who went to the abbot and said, listen, abbot, Hildegard had this vision, and she's very convinced that God is telling her to speak and write, and I believe her.
And of course, we all know there's no turning back. And once the opening begins, it just continues to unfold. And so Hildegard was so important to me, because I think from her I gained courage, I gained that inner strength.
And that sense of being called in all those in various ways, one of them being to interpret the scriptures, that's part of the 1141 vision also, moved her to keep writing.
She wrote 2 works on what we call nowadays medicine, but it's not really about medicine, because she compiled the knowledge of her time concerning herbs and such things. And it is a difficult thing, because you cannot divide it from the Creator, from God. And if you do that, then it goes in the esoteric way and something like that. And this is not what we want to do in our shop. So we have just some herbs or something, but not what other people would like us to have. So.
She wrote her books through visions, through inspiration. She didn't do research on that. It's impossible, because she had only 2 years in her life to write the medicinal books. So, and it's about 2,000 remedies, so how can you make research on people with 2,000 drugs? So it was inspired. She, for example, she took the stone in her hand and says, what's with the chalcedony? What kind of healing forces are in there? And she got that idea inspired or in vision and dictated that to a monk, because she was not able to write herself.
I believe that Hildegard was not just a personal one-on-one healer, but she was a societal healer. And I believe that she actually looked at some of the structures of our society and tried to bring about change. And she had many men at that time very much respected her, because she spoke from and she wrote from such a place of inner authority that came from her mystical relationship with creation.
So we have more of her intellectual contributions to her culture than we do for any woman from the Middle Ages. And I think if she were a man, she would be recognized perhaps as one of the greatest figures of the Middle Ages.
Hildegard had a sense of being human that never departed from her. And for her, The human was beautiful.
She really believed that being made in the image of God meant that we too are creators. And so we sort of have a responsibility to create, to add to that which is good, you know? God said, you know, let there be light, and there was light and it was good. And so that's part of our divinity, is to create goodness and beauty.
God loves man, and his love flows over the world, which she says in one of her songs, Caritas Abundat. And this is also a very important point people have to know nowadays.
I think she opened up people's hearts, not their minds, but their hearts, to having this relationship with Jesus, with creation, through prayer.
That God wants to be in relation with man. And that's why he created the world where we live. And because Adam and Eve did not work so good at the beginning, he tried to come into relation with human beings again by sending his son in the world. And this is the important message, which also is nowadays an important message still.
Aquinas says, the same spirit that hovered over the waters at the beginning of creation hovers over the mind of the artist at work. In other words, creation is still going on, and in a special way in human imagination. And Hildegard says that too in her own words.
It was billed as a rebirthing retreat, timed to coincide with spring equinox. As I walked the grounds of Dizzy Botenberg, the hilltop sanctuary of Hildegard's first abbey, above two rivers, there was a thin veil of past and present. The place felt holy. It is a place to explore alone, but I never felt alone. You could almost hear the singing of Hildegard's nuns amongst the trees on that cold March day. As I discovered, Hildegard's spirit is still alive, ready to awaken us to our own unruly mystic. It may take courage, but the end result is no less than becoming closer to the Spirit of God within each of us. I wish to inspire you on your own divine path of creativity and spirituality, the ultimate awakening to your own unruly mystic. That is my intention in this moment.
This incredibly beautiful music that had been written by this woman who had lived in the 1100s. And I was just mesmerized.
Hildegard's music was not easy. If anyone who wants to approach Hildegard's songs has to be serious about it. It's not something that you do lightly, because it's so demanding vocally. It's demanding with the breath. The phrases are very long. The range of the song, you know, how many notes it encompasses. An octave and a half, 2 octaves. There are even a couple of songs that have 2.5 octave ranges, which is extreme for music.
And as far as we know, Hildegard's music is the earliest music that we have that we know for sure was written by a woman.
She heard her songs in her own spirit, and those songs, she said, were from her visionary work. She would hear the music, she would hear the words, and then she would put it together and sing it, probably. She probably sang it as she composed. And
Carl Jung says, "As to the mystics, there belongs what is best in humanity." So it's not just about religion, but it's about humanity itself getting on its feet and being itself, its better self, its authentic self. For that too, the mystics lead the way, because they're at the edge of human consciousness, and they're wrestling with the extremes, whether it's wrestling with the extremes of evil or the extremes of ecstasy and of creativity. They have so much to say. Hildegard is a good example.